never thought I'd be the kind of man who stood in his own kitchen at midnight, scrubbing a pan he hadn't even used, while his wife watched from the doorway with a look that wasn't quite satisfaction, but wasn't far from it either. My name is Daniel, and 6 months ago, I had a good life. A real one. I had a job I was proud of, a home I helped build, a marriage I believed in. And then, slowly, so slowly, I didn't even notice it happening, I became something else entirely. I became her maid. Not in the dramatic way you're imagining. That's the thing about how control works. It never announces itself. It doesn't arrive at your door with a list of rules. It seeps in, through small requests, through disappointed silences, through a raised eyebrow that somehow makes you feel like a failure without a single word being spoken. It started the week I lost my job. The company downsized. 30 people gone in a single afternoon. I was one of them. I came home that evening and I told Sarah and she hugged me and I thought, okay, we'll get through this. We always do. But something shifted that night. I couldn't name it then. I can name it now. She stopped asking. And I started doing. The first week, I cooked because I felt guilty about not contributing. The second week, I cleaned because she mentioned just once, lightly, that the bathroom tiles were looking a little gray. By the third week, I had a routine. Wake up before her. Coffee on the counter before she came downstairs. Breakfast ready. Kitchen spotless. She never asked me to do these things. But she noticed when I didn't. I remember the first real moment I felt something was wrong. It was a Thursday. I'd spent the entire day applying for jobs, cooking, doing laundry, vacuuming the stairs. When Sarah came home, she dropped her bag by the front door, right next to the shoe rack, not on it, and walked past me without saying hello. I waited. She sat on the couch, scrolled her phone, and after about 10 minutes she looked up and said, "Did you move the throw pillows?" I had. I'd washed them and put them back in a slightly different arrangement. "I prefer them the other way," she said, and went back to her phone. I stood there for a moment. Then I went and rearranged the pillows. And I told myself, she's stressed. She works hard. This is temporary. But here's the thing about temporary. Sometimes it becomes the only life you know. I found a job offer in the fourth week. A good one. Decent salary, familiar industry, reasonable commute. I told Sarah over dinner, excited, expecting her to match my energy. She looked at the screen, nodded slowly, said, "That commute does seem long." It was 22 minutes. I didn't apply. I still don't fully understand why. I think part of me had already started to believe, really believe, that I wasn't ready, that I needed more time. That Sarah probably knew better. She had a way of doing that, making doubt feel like wisdom. A month passed, then another. My days took on a strange rhythm. Wake up. Clean. Cook. Apply to jobs half-heartedly. Cook again. Clean again. Wait for Sarah to come home. Try to read her mood before she even took off her coat. Adjust accordingly. I became fluent in a language I'd never meant to learn, the language of her displeasure. The way she exhaled when something wasn't right. The particular silence that meant I'd forgotten something. The smile that wasn't quite a smile when she said it's fine but meant the opposite of fine. I got good at anticipating it. Better than excellent. And somehow that felt like an achievement. One evening, Sarah's friend Rachel came over for dinner. I cooked. Set the table properly. Stayed mostly in the kitchen while they talked, coming out to refill glasses and clear plates. At one point I heard Rachel say, quietly but not quietly enough, "Wow, he's really domestic now." And Sarah laughed and said, "He's found his calling." They both laughed. I stood in the kitchen with a dishcloth in my hand, and I laughed too, a little, because I didn't know what else to do with the feeling that had just dropped through the floor of my chest. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. I thought, when did I stop being her husband and become her help? But then morning came, and she needed her coffee a certain way, and the thought dissolved before I could hold it. That's the thing about this kind of life. It keeps you too busy to think. The shift happened on a random Tuesday. I was on my hands and knees cleaning the baseboards, something she'd mentioned twice that week, when my phone rang. It was Marcus, my old colleague. He'd found a new position. He was calling to check on me and to tell me about an opening at his new company. "It's got your name on it, Dan," he said. "They're asking about you specifically." I was quiet for a second. Then I heard Sarah's car pull into the driveway. "I'll call you back," I said. I never called him back. I've thought about that moment 1,000 times since. Why didn't I just say yes? I wasn't afraid of working. I wasn't content at home. I was exhausted, actually, the kind of exhausted that doesn't come from physical work but from constant emotional monitoring, from never being fully off duty. So, why did I hang up? I think because somewhere along the way I had accepted something I didn't realize I'd accepted. That my purpose had changed. That this was what I was for now. That Sarah needed me in this role, and her need felt like the only identity I had left. And then I found the journal. It wasn't hidden, exactly. It was in a drawer I opened by mistake looking for the scissors. A small navy notebook. I recognized it. She'd had it for years. She used to write in it sometimes. I should have closed the drawer. Instead, I opened it to a random page. And I read a sentence that made my hands go cold. "He's so much easier to manage now." I read it 3 times. I turned the page. The job applications, I planted the doubt about the commute. It worked perfectly. He didn't even question it. My vision did something strange. Like the room tilted slightly, but the furniture didn't move. I kept reading. I wish I could tell you I closed the notebook and walked away. I didn't. Page after page. Entry after entry. A quiet, methodical documentation of a system I hadn't known I was living inside. The day she mentioned the bathroom tiles, she'd written about it beforehand. Planned it. Noted that mentioning it casually while distracted will land better than asking directly. The dinner with Rachel. Scripted. The phone is calling line. She'd written it out. Thought about the delivery. My entire daily routine mapped. Adjusted. Refined. She had been engineering my life for months. And I had followed every invisible instruction without ever knowing there was a manual. I sat on the kitchen floor for what felt like an hour. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The feeling was too large and too precise for tears. It was something more like the sensation of watching a building you thought was solid reveal it was made of paper, and understanding that you'd been living inside it. When Sarah came home that evening, she called out a hello from the door, dropped her bag in its usual spot, and walked into the kitchen expecting what? Dinner. A clean counter. The correct arrangement of things. I was sitting at the table. No dinner. No coffee. Nothing on the stove. She looked at me. Then at the stove. Then back at me. "Is everything okay?" she asked. And I said, very quietly, "I read your journal." The silence that followed was its own kind of answer. She didn't deny it. That was the first thing that surprised me. She sat down across from me, and she was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, "How much did you read?" "Enough," I said. She nodded slowly, like she was processing a logistical problem. And then she said something I never expected. "I was going to tell you, eventually." I looked at her. "Tell me what, exactly?" She took a breath. "That I was scared. When you lost your job, I panicked. Not about money, about you. About who you were becoming. You were slipping, Daniel. You were depressed, and you didn't even know it. You stopped caring about anything." I started to speak. She kept going. "I know what I did wasn't right. I know that. But I had tried talking to you, real conversations, remember? About purpose, about structure. You dismissed every single one. So, I chose a different way. I gave you a structure you would actually accept." "You manipulated me," I said. "Yes," she said. And the plainness of it hit harder than any defense would have. She folded her hands on the table. "And you were better. You were sleeping. You were present. You stopped looking like a man who'd given up." I thought about the past months. The exhaustion, yes. But also, I had been sleeping. I had been present. I hadn't felt the specific gray emptiness that had swallowed me after the layoff. "That doesn't make it right," I said. "No," she agreed. "It doesn't." We sat in silence for a long time. And here is the thing that I'm still turning over in my mind, months later, the thing that keeps the story from having a clean ending. She wasn't entirely wrong. Not about the method. Never about the method. What she did was a violation. A profound one. She reached into my sense of self and quietly rewired it without my consent. That's not love. That's control. And the fact that it came from fear doesn't make it clean. But about me, about the state I was in, she had seen something true. Something I hadn't wanted to look at. I had been dissolving. After that night, things were broken in a way that doesn't unbreak. We tried. We talked. We went to a counselor who sat in a beige office and asked careful questions. I applied for jobs and got one, a good one, the kind I'd been avoiding. I reclaimed pieces of my day. My sense of direction. My voice. But I never fully forgot what it felt like to be managed without knowing it. To be optimized. To be, in some careful and clinical sense, useful. Some nights, I still catch myself checking the counter before she comes home, making sure everything is in its right place. And I don't know if that's habit or something deeper, some residue of the person I was trained to become. The scariest part? There are moments, quiet ones, when the house is clean and dinner is warm and everything is exactly where it should be, when some part of me misses the simplicity of not knowing. The cage was comfortable. That's the truth I live with. And maybe that's the real story here. Not that my wife turned me into her personal maid, but that I became one so naturally, so willingly, that the question I can't stop asking isn't how she did it. It's why it was so easy.